Well, in 2020, Betsy DeVos is our education secretary. Clearly, she's a big part of the charter school push across America. But that obviously didn't start with her. George W. Bush was a big part of this, but Obama, of course, was very friendly to charter schools. And I guess I'm looking at it from the perspective of how are we going to get out of this when you have somebody leading the Democratic ticket right now who is a product of a White House that pushed for a lot of the measures that kept the charter school movement going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you sort of hit the nail on the head. And just to give listeners just a little bit of background, I mean, charter schools had been capped in a lot of states. So North Carolina, for instance, had said 100 charter schools in the state of North Carolina, no more, which is to say maximum one per school district across the state. But, during the last recession, Secretary Duncan said that, these applications for new federal funds will be in jeopardized by any state who places an artificial cap on charter schools. So, in a moment of financial distress, a lot of states eliminated those caps, and you saw, us go from having 1 million students in charter schools to 3 million students in charter schools. So enormous expansion. You are expressing a fear that a lot of folks have expressed, which is, well, if that's the last administration, is just going to be more of the same. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot we don't know about Joe Biden, to be quite honest. I don't mean that in a bad or a good way, right? That if you wanted to look at the most detailed progressive plan out there, that would have been Elizabeth Warren's. And by full disclosure, the campaign reached out to me, and I gave them what they needed to come up with a funding plan to fix America's schools. Joe, lot vaguer on the points there, and so. But I will say, the Network for Public Education had a convening in Pittsburgh last November, maybe it was December, where all of the Democratic candidates showed up, and there was a real show of force by public education advocates, and he talked the talk then. Now there were some generalities to it, but he did talk the talk. How that shakes out in real policy, I don't know, because there's ultimately going to be experts that he hires to run his department that are going to move us in one direction or the other. And, I don't know who those people are going to be yet. I've heard names, but I don't know who they're going to be yet.
So, I mean, from my perspective, I just think that politically he really has no choice. I mean, just same thing with Medicare for All, for instance. Like, these might have been cornerstones of the ACA might have been a cornerstone of the Obama administration, but we're in a different time, and the political pressure is much more sophisticated and organized and frustrated too. I mean, I have no doubt that the public, Randy Weingarten was promised a ton, and did teachers receive it? No. But even in Democratic states, I mean, this is not just a red state issue. This is not just a North Carolina, Arizona issue. New York, for instance, the charter school movement in New York held up the legislature, arguably, for quite a bit of time, paid a lot of Democratic senators to go work with Republicans, creating that IDC dilemma, so they could push for more charter schools. And now you see a return to a Democratic legislature that is more public school focused. And I mean, notoriously, like, those New York City schools are underfunded, and now you see what's happening in the midst of this COVID crisis. So can we just rewind? Let's go all the way back. Let's go back to like the Koch brothers. Like, how did this all start?
Well, I would say that obviously the Koch brothers don't want to pay any more taxes to support your children or my children. They want their tax bill to be as low as possible, right? Or as Grover Norquist has said, to shrink government to the size that you can drown it in the bathtub, right? And at the federal level, that is healthcare and Social Security. But at the state level, that's public education, right? Public education consumes the lion's share of all state and local resources. So if you're trying to shrink government to the size that you can drown it in a bathtub, you're talking about kids in public schools, right? At the state level. So I think for that group of folks, this is just about money and small government ideology. I think there's another sort of part of that constituency that is religiously motivated, that have always felt that they're double taxed and that the government is discriminating against them, and they ought to be able to pursue their religious efforts on the public dime. And then there's this third, what I find far more sympathetic part of that constituency, which is also part of the charter school constituency. It is true that we have minority communities across this country that never in the history of the United States have been fully served by their state and local government. And so when you hear, some white guy, even if he went to integrated schools and does race work, saying, hey, believe in the public schools. Those public schools haven't served them. And they're ultimately saying, look, we have to have solutions. And I'm sympathetic to that. My argument is not really one against those families in a precarious situation. My argument is that, the enemy is not the public school system. The enemy is the state legislature who refuses to fund the public school system. And the enemy is the one who's trying to sell you vouchers and charters. So be careful about making a deal with the enemy.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.